Hey everybody, it's the Burger Dude, and today I want to show you how I make a French dip but vegan. Now the origins of the French dip are somewhat contested, as there's two restaurants in downtown Los Angeles that claim to have invented it, those being Cole's and Philippe's respectively. Personally, I fancied Cole's over Philippe's mostly because of the atmosphere. Cole's makes you feel like you're stepping back in time as they've completely restored it to its early 20th century glory. Plus, I could get a cocktail with my French dip as well. I really felt like a bald, poor man's Don Draper when I'd go there. Also at Cole's, you actually get to dip your sandwich yourself, whereas at Philippe's, it was pre-dipped. Now, a French dip is essentially a sandwich typically served with roast beef that is dipped in a beefy broth called an au jus. It's super delicious and comforting, and the good news is this vegan version is just as good as I remember. In fact, when I had my non-vegan neighbors taste test it, one of them told me I would eat 8 feet of that, which might be the best review I've gotten to date. But enough yapping, let's make this French dip. So the first thing we're going to do is the au jus, which is arguably the most important part of a French dip, because without it, it's not really a French dip now, is it? It's just a roast beef sandwich. So we're going to get a shallot. We're going to finely chop that up, as well as some garlic cloves. If you've got a garlic press, I highly suggest using that. Those are ready to go. Next up is the Worcestershire sauce. I can never say it. And just make sure it's vegan. Sometimes they have anchovies in them, so just check the back like that. Make sure there's no little fishies in there. And then next up is the red wine, and not all wine is vegan either, so just make sure to use a website like Barnivore to double check. We're also going to use this Better Than Bouillon vegetarian no beef base, and make sure that you get the vegetarian one. The non-vegan one, the packaging looks very similar, except for it doesn't have the certified vegan on there. It doesn't say beefless base. You can also use this veggie broth if you can't find the beefless stuff. And they're both really good. The beefless broth is just, it's beefier. It tastes like beef. It's very uncanny. We're also going to do some vegan butter like that. So get a pan over some medium heat and add a little bit of oil. And then we're going to add in our shallots. You could also use chopped up onion if you like, but I was just feeling like using up my shallots. Next, we're going to add in our garlic after a few minutes. Once our shallots look like that, and then we're going to cook our garlic for about a minute or so. You just don't want to overcook it. You don't want to burn it because then it'll get kind of bitter and it won't taste very good. After our garlic has toasted for a little bit, we're going to add in our Worcestershire sauce, and it's going to steam up the camera real good like that. Next up is our wine, which is also going to steam up the camera. And just stir those around, get those incorporated. And then we're going to add in our vegan butter. And what we're going to do with the butter is we're going to get that melted, and then we're going to add in some flour, and it's going to kind of create a roux to thicken up the au jus. If you want to be a little bit lazier, you could just heat up some beefless broth and use that. It just won't be as rich or decadent, or won't have really the same kind of depth of flavor. I do recommend doing it this way that I'm showing you. And then once you've cooked down your flour for about a minute, we're going to add in that beefless broth. And at this point, you just want to stir everything around and kind of deglaze the pan. If anything's stuck to it, go ahead and use your wooden spoon to scrape it up. And we just want to bring this up to a boil. And then once we get it up to a boil, let's lower the heat. And we're just going to cook it and simmer it for about, 3 minutes or so. And after that 3 minutes, you're basically done with your au jus. So just cover it and keep it on low heat while we do the onions. Now I'm using a sweet onion, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut this French style since we're making a French dip. And what that means is you want to cut it pole to pole as opposed to cutting it horizontally. And you're going to get these kind of nice uniform sort of crescent moon shaped pieces of onion. Just make sure you don't cut it too thin because they'll burn. This is basically what you want right there. And next, we're going to get our pan heated up with a little bit of oil. And all we're going to do is cook these onions down for about 15 or 20 minutes. This is probably the most time-consuming part of the recipe, but it's totally worth it. And, since it takes a while, I would recommend just doing a bunch of onions. And then if you have some leftover ones, you could just keep them in the fridge and then heat them up later for another sandwich or really whatever you like. I love just having, caramelized onions readily available at any time. But you're just going to kind of cook them down. Once they kind of look like that, we're going to add in about a half cup of the au jus. And that's just going to impart some nice beefy sort of flavor to the onions. It's going to give them some nice color as well. And once they look something like that, you're pretty much done. But if you're impatient like me, then you are done. So just keep them on low heat to keep them warm while we make our vegan roast beef. Now you could use these kinds of products if you like, if you want to just take the quick and easy route. You could also totally use these portobello mushrooms. I've seen a lot of people do this for a vegan French dip as well. But personally, I like using these soy curls. They really soak in a lot of flavor. They've got a really great texture. They've got a lot of chew to them. And they're relatively inexpensive. I find mine online. You could find them at butlerfoods.com, as you can see there. And yeah, really, really awesome. I can't believe I haven't been using them more often. And now that I've done this recipe, I definitely want to start employing them as much as possible. And all you got to do to prep them is just soak them in some water. This is going to rehydrate them because they're dry. And just soak them in some water for about 10 minutes. And during that 10 minutes, we're going to put together our marinade that we're going to cook them in. So we're going to start off with that beefless broth again. You can really see the beefless broth is kind of the star of the show here. We're going to add in some soy sauce or some tamari, as well as some more of that Worcestershire sauce. And then some steak sauce. Just make sure it's vegan. A1 is actually vegan, if you can believe that. And I found this stuff at Whole Foods, but any old steak sauce will do. We're going to do some balsamic vinegar as well. And then next up, we're going to add in some tomato paste, which is going to add some color and some umami. Essentially, we're just adding in a lot of umami sort of flavor bombs. That's some molasses there for color and for flavor. Molasses is very strong. We're going to throw in some au jus sauce as well. And then this mushroom seasoning, which I use pretty much in every recipe. Thank you, Sauce Stash, for introducing me to that. And some dried thyme. And we're going to whisk that up. And that's going to be just about 10 minutes. It's going to take us to put that together, which is perfect because now our soy curls are ready to be strained. So throw them in a colander and then just take your hand and just crush them to get all that excess water out. Really take out your aggression on them. Or if you're feeling joyous, give them a real strong, hand hug as well. That works too. And then we're going to get a pan over medium heat with some oil, and we're just going to toss in those soy curls and just cook them for about 6 or 7 minutes. We just kind of want to get them a little bit browned before we add in our marinade. And then after a few minutes, they should look like that. So we're going to add in the marinade that we've got. And now at this point, all you need to do is cook them down and reduce all that sauce so that they absorb it up. Should take about 8 to 10 minutes or so. And once they look something like this, they're pretty much done and it's ready to assemble. But first, let's get our condiments ready. So I like to make a horseradish mayo as well as a horseradish mustard. If you don't like stuff too spicy, you don't need to use this horseradish if you don't want to. Just make sure that the horseradish is vegan. Sometimes there's like horseradish cream sauces that have eggs or milk or whatever in them. So just make sure that it's pure horseradish. You could also do some Dijon mustard like I am doing here. And Dijon is already a little spicy. And when you add the horseradish, you can really feel it go through your nostrils, which I kind of dig. So that's what I did it. But do whatever you like. Now we do got to discuss the bread. If you want to go, again, cheap and easy, you could get these kinds of French rolls. And these are totally fine. The only problem is they get a little soft once you start dipping them. So personally, I like something a little bit sturdier. So I like to get like a French baguette like this because it's crusty on the outside, kind of soft on the inside. So it's pretty ideal, in my opinion, for the French dip. But whichever bread you decide to go with, I do recommend toasting it with some butter. And then we're going to give it a good slathering of that horseradish mayo. And of course, we also got to get a good slathering of that horseradish mustard as well. And don't skimp. This stuff is going to come together beautifully, especially with these onions. So just pile those up as high as you like. And then next we're going to pile up our vegan roast beef. And this, my friends, is one of the greatest sandwiches I've ever made. It honestly is. And I'm looking at this and I'm so jealous of my past self, as I often am when I watch these videos and I'm doing the VO. So anyways, give it a good old slice. If you want to slice it horizontally, you can. I find that horizontal or just doing it straight is fine. But no matter how you slice it, we're going to add some au jus to our ramekin. And then we're going to give that the old dipperino right there. And that is one of the greatest bites you're ever going to have. And what's great about a French dip is they actually require you to double, triple, quadruple, quintuple dip as many times as you like. I mean, look at that. Wonderful. Let's do a little bit of a closer shot. Why not? Man, look at that. And I got to tell you, the sandwich, you got the au jus, you got the roast beef, the mustard, the mayo, and the bread, and it really is just one of the greatest sandwiches ever made. I hope you all make it, and if you do, let me know how it goes. Hope you're doing great, and I'll see you all next week.